Hi, Zoomers. Wow. All right. Wow, what a nice welcome. I wish it was like that every time I walk in the office. That was great. Well, hey, everybody in the room, everybody in the Zoom. I'm here not to distract you or tie you up for too long, but just to thank you in a big way for everything that you're doing. We are inside of the 1 week mark now. We know how important it is to reach as many voters as you possibly can. And look, we all know what's at stake. And I think the proportions of what is going on right now could feel so cosmic that it's almost paralyzing, right? And the Dobbs decision has us asking whether we have lived to see the high watermark of rights and freedoms in this country, or whether they're going to continue expanding as they have throughout U.S. history in the long run. The things we're seeing from the other side in terms of election denial have us questioning whether the most important fact about America, which is that we're a democracy, however imperfect, is actually going to endure. And that's what the president's going to be talking about tonight. The events of last weekend and the response to them have us wondering how it ever became partisan that when there is an assassination attempt on a public official or their family member, the only correct response is, of course, universal, swift condemnation, right? Like, these are some of the things that we're dealing with. These may or may not be where folks' heads are, though, as we're calling and you're reaching out to voters around the country. So it bears repeating that on the more bread and butter issues, the cost of living, where our country is headed in a very tactical backyard kind of way, we're with the American people on that too. Don't fall into this sometimes pattern or habit we have on our side of the aisle of sort of assuming that we're actually in the minority of public opinion on these issues. This is exactly the right time to be leaning into our message, not just on the issues we love to talk about, but on the issues they love to talk about. Because when it comes to, let's say, inflation, for example, they don't have a plan. Can anybody name me 5 things Republicans would do to deal with inflation? Nothing. Not only that, in a cost of living pocketbook election, maybe we shouldn't be turning to the folks who are repeatedly prescribing tax cuts for the wealthy and protecting the flank of some of the corporations that are showing ridiculous levels of profitability right now, right? We have nothing to hide from when it comes to our message, or of course, when it comes to the results of what we've been able to achieve, even in this complicated town in the last couple of years. Unbelievable results, any one of which would be defining for an ordinary presidency. But to circle back to where I began, these are no ordinary times. So I just wanted to remind you of that win that is in our sails. If everybody votes, we win. Walking away. It's not even close. And that's where you come in, because it turns out not everybody votes. And I know it's a cliche to say it all comes down to turnout. So all commentators say, well, it's all come down to turnout, really. But it really is. The argument's basically over. There'll be a few more big public speeches, but the argument, not only is the argument basically over, but when it comes to policy, we've pretty much won the argument. It's just that just because you won the argument doesn't mean you get to win the election. The election, for all those cosmic things I was talking about at the beginning, comes down to the most simple, unglamorous arithmetic of whether more people went and voted for our person than the other person in district after district and state after state across the country. And that's largely, amazingly, a direct function of whether we just called them up and asked. And that's a big part of what you're doing too. It makes a bigger difference than you can imagine, especially when you multiply it out by the number of phone calls that this room alone, and I'm looking at the roomers and I'm looking at the Zoomers, that this event alone is going to produce could be a tipping point if you look at how close some of these races are going to be. So I know by definition I'm preaching to the choir, but I also know that it bears repeating to say thank you for giving up your time for this most worthy cause. Thank you for being there, not just for a political party, but as I now have come to learn to view the world, for my kids, who I'm ready to have grow up in a world where we have beaten the climate challenge by the time they're old enough to ask. Where it is beyond question, whatever party you belong to, that we adhere to democratic principles by the time they're old enough to ask, and that they will find it peculiar that anything was considered shaky about the legal foundation of the family that they were raised in, because we're well past that by the time they're old enough to ask. That's what you're building. So for that, I thank you. And I hope you have just a little bit of fun along the way, because I can tell this is a great room full of people. So thanks for everything that you're doing. Let's put me in a position to make lots and lots of celebratory phone calls around the country on Wednesday when we wake up. Thanks very much.
Let's start the